I'm watching something here. Welcome to the first episode of From Static to Cinematic. I call it that because a set is static if it doesn't move you. Let me show you what I mean. This is a static scene. It's plain, it's boring, doesn't really say much. This, however, says, okay, I'm watching something here. It looks professional because the look of your video alone can make someone want to click on it and watch what you have to say. That's why thumbnails are so effective. So that is what we're going to be doing here on this new show, From Static to Cinematic. I'm going to be showing you how to turn normal everyday environments into cinematic masterpieces. You know, nowadays the word cinematic is thrown around a lot in video production. There's so many video tutorials on YouTube with the title, How to Make Your Videos Look Cinematic. But what do people actually mean by cinematic? Well, cinematic means your video looks like a movie. It has the visual qualities of a movie in the way that it was shot. And a movie is shot by making use of cinematography. And as fancy as that sounds, all cinematography is combining camera movements, camera angles, lighting, framing and composition, choice of camera and lens, color grading to help tell a story in your videos. I'll make an example using one of these elements, and that's color grading. A horror movie will usually make use of dark and cool colors to tell a story, while a romantic comedy will make use of warm and bright colors. I'll make another example using camera movements and camera angles. Have you ever noticed that in a movie when someone is talking about something very intense and serious, the camera slowly moves towards their face as they get deeper and deeper and more intense with whatever they're saying? Well, the reason you feel that intensity outside of the dialogue is because of the camera movement. It's adding to the emotion. And another example is with camera angles. In movies, when they want to make the characters seem small and inferior, they'll shoot from a high camera angle, thus showing the character as below and small in a room. And when they want to make the character seem more bigger and of authority, they'll shoot from a low camera angle, making the character seem big, basically owning the room. So my goal with this show is to help you learn how to apply these cinematography techniques in your videos and to give you a template for how you can shoot cinematic videos in different environments and situations that you might find yourself in. Starting with this one, because at some point in your video production journey, you're going to need to shoot a talking head. Talking head videos are basically a person speaking into the camera. You usually see them in documentary interviews and YouTube videos just like this one. So once you've chosen the background you want to use for your interview, the next step is to decide what kind of lighting you want to use. And this will depend on the mood and tone of the interview that you're shooting. Is it dramatic, sad, mysterious, or lighthearted? What is the topic at hand? I'm going to show you the different ways you can light up your interviews. The first thing I like to do is switch off all the room lights and block out any lights coming in from outside through the windows. The room needs to be as dark as possible so that I'm starting my lighting on a blank canvas. Don't get me wrong, you can make use of the lights coming in from the window because I know a lot of YouTubers like to sit next to a window and make their videos. But when you're shooting cinematic videos, you don't want to do this because as the sun keeps moving through the day, your lighting will keep changing, thus affecting your exposure and color temperature. The next thing I do is switch on my key light and decide how I want to position it to light up my subject. There's 5 different ways to light up your subject using a key light. And the difference between these 5 techniques is how contrast is created on your subject depending on the direction in which you position your key light. So the first lighting method I want to show you is the split lighting technique. It's called the split lighting technique because the key light only lights up one half of the face, leaving the other half in the dark. So it splits the face into 2 shades. So the way to achieve this lighting technique is by putting your key lights 90 degrees from the direction the subject is facing. So instead of degrees, we're going to use a clock. If where the camera is 6 o'clock over here, this is going to be our 3 o'clock where the key light currently is, and then this is going to be our 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then 6 o'clock. I just find it easier to use the clock as opposed to degrees. So if we had to repeat that, how you achieve this lighting technique is by putting your key light at 3 o'clock from the direction your subject is facing or from where the camera is placed. And you can use this lighting technique with the fill light to hide unpleasant facial features. The split lighting technique is used to dramatize an interview. So if you look at this setup right now, it's kind of very dramatic. It's a very dramatic setup for an interview. So if you have those kind of interviews where you know, it's like a serious topic at hand, you can use this technique just to add a little more drama and more seriousness and depth to your interviews. And also, this lighting technique is used to make faces look slimmer. Because you can only see one half of the face, it gives the impression that someone's face is a bit slimmer, especially if they have a wide face. So now I want to show you guys how the split lighting technique looks with the fill lights to hide unwanted facial features. Okay, cool. So now we've switched on our fill lights over there, and you can kind of see there's a shadow in the middle of my face, right here. So this side we have our key light, and then on this side we have our fill lights over there. So these two lights coming from different directions cause a shadow in the middle of my face. So let's say somebody has a scar, an unpleasant scar, or there's something you want to hide on this part of their face. You can use this lighting technique and keep these parts that you do not necessarily want to see on the camera in the dark. Now let's see this technique with the hair lights and the background lights. So this is how the split lighting technique looks when you have your background lights on, your hair lights, your fill lights, and your key light. So this is how the interview would go. And you can still see that half of my face is still lit up while the other half is still in the dark. Yes, we have a little fill light over here now, but it's still part of the split lighting technique. So now I'm going to show you the next lighting technique, which is called Rembrandt lighting. So this lighting technique, all we have to do is move our key light towards 4 o'clock. Basically, we're going towards the camera. Okay, cool. So this is Rembrandt lighting. So now, as you can see, there's a little triangle under my right eye over here. And that's the main characteristic of Rembrandt lighting. All it is it's a lighting technique that creates a triangle under the subject's eye. So this is used to also make your interviews more dramatic, but at the same time seem a bit more natural, because now you're starting to see more of the person's facial features, as opposed to the split lighting technique where you can't see the other half. So there's kind of like a mystery behind the person. Whereas with Rembrandt lighting, now you're starting to see the facial features on the right side. So this lighting technique is mostly used in dramatic interviews, more than split lighting, because with split lighting you have to have a reason why you want to hide one side of somebody's face, you know. Whereas with this one, it's just, we're not really trying to hide the subject's facial features, we just want to make the subject seem a bit more dramatic, you know. So we're not really trying to create a mystery or anything like that. So that's why they say it's a lighting technique that's dramatic but a bit more natural. Let's see how it looks with the fill lights, hair lights, and the background lights. Okay, cool. So this is our Rembrandt lighting with all our 4 lights on. And yeah, this is how the interview would go. So you can see that as much as our fill lights is very strong over here on this side of my cheek, we still have the triangle. So it's like even when you add different lights to your setup, you still have the characteristics of the lighting technique, because it's like the start, right? Because it starts with the first lights, which is the key light, to build the lighting technique. And then all the other lights are just cherries on top. You're building on top of it and you're making it look nice, you know? So it's like you're adding more spices to the lighting technique. So yeah, that's how I look at it. So yeah, you still have the triangle, you have your fill light, you have your hair lights, and you have your background lights, and this would be your interview. And I think this looks very dramatic, very cinematic, and yeah, also very natural. It's kind of like, you know, there's nothing too mysterious and dark about our character, and it's kind of cool. So while we're here on Rembrandt's lighting, I just want to talk about the sub-techniques of Rembrandt's lighting, which is short lighting and broad lighting. So they are the sub of Rembrandt's lighting because you don't have to change the position of your key light in order to achieve them. So they still fall under the same lighting position as Rembrandt's lighting. So for instance, short lighting. So short lighting is similar to Rembrandt lighting because all you have to do is turn the subject's face towards the key lights like this. So it's called short lighting because you only see a little bit of the face lit up. So as you can see, it's kind of hard to do this while looking at the monitor, but it's only this part of my face that's lit, whereas you have this entire area in the shadow. So it also creates a slimming effect to your character because only a small portion of the face is lit up. And then we have broad lighting. Broad lighting is also similar to Rembrandt lighting, but all you have to do is turn your subject's face away from the light like this. So now we are in broad lighting. So it's called broad lighting because majority of the face is in the light, whereas a small portion of the face is in the shadow. So the light is hitting most of the face. And then when you come back, when you move your head straight into an interview position, like how we had it, we are back to Rembrandt lighting. So you can see how and when to use these lighting techniques depending on what you're going for. Okay, cool. So, like I said, we're slowly moving our key light towards 6 o'clock. So as we're moving our key light towards 6 o'clock, we're getting different lighting techniques. So for this next lighting technique, we're moving our key lights closer to 5 o'clock. So this negative fill has to move with the key light to make sure that we're blocking the key light from spilling onto our background. So obviously, the more we move our key light towards the camera, the more it faces the background. So it's gonna get harder and harder to prevent it from spilling onto the background. But because at the same time, I need to keep the negative fill away from camera side. So yeah, I'm just gonna move the key lights back a bit because our negative fill is not big enough to block this key light. We're still getting a bit of spill on that side of the wall. What we can do is we can try to move our key lights back a bit more and move our negative fill a bit more forward. Okay, I'm not too mad at this. I mean, I can still see that our key lights is spilling over onto our background, but I'm not too mad at that, you know? Because eventually it's gonna spill onto the background because the more it goes towards the camera, it's going to start facing the background, which is gonna cause it to spill onto the background. So naturally that's gonna happen. So what you do in this particular situation is that you put a grid on your key lights to prevent it from spilling too much on the background. So I'm just using negative fill because I do not have a grid. But at the same time, if you do not have a grid, what you can do is if you have gaffer tape, you can cut gaffer tape into like small strips and then start sticking it onto your softbox and actually create the grid yourself. So that's a nice DIY trick that you can use. So this lighting technique is called loop lighting. Loop lighting is a lighting technique that creates a circular shadow under the subject's face, just under the nose, like you can see over here. There's like a small little circular shadow under my nose. It's called loop lighting because of the loop shape that sits under the nose. And it's kind of similar to Rembrandt lighting. It's just that now the triangle is a bit more open. And as you can see over here, our triangle has opened up a bit. So now we are in what's called loop lighting. So as you can see, the slight change in position of your key lights, you go into a different lighting technique. So it all depends on what you're trying to do, what looks good for whatever you're trying to do for the story in your interview, and so on and so on. You can use this lighting technique for the same purposes as Rembrandt lighting, really. Still dramatic and very natural at the same time. So let's see how this lighting technique looks with our hairlights, our backlights, and our fill light. Okay, cool. So like I was saying, when you add these additional lights, the initial lighting technique that you create with only one light, which is the key lights, you should still be able to maintain the characteristics of that lighting technique. So you can still see the circular loop under my nose, even though we have all these additional lights coming into play now. Okay, cool guys. So there's two more lighting techniques that I'm not gonna do only because I don't deem them as cinematic. And this show is all about cinematography. And that's the butterfly lighting technique and the flat lighting technique. So I'm just gonna show you guys a few cutaways of examples of butterfly lighting and flat lighting so you can see how they actually look, and it's up to you when you want to use them. So butterfly and flat lighting techniques are not cinematic lighting techniques because you don't get the nice contrast between the shadows and the light side that you get with all the other lighting techniques. Let me show you. So the first of these two lighting techniques is butterfly lighting, which is a lighting technique where you place the key lights above the subject's head, creating a shadow under their nose with a shape that resembles a butterfly. This lighting technique is used a lot in beauty photography because it's a lighting technique that produces less shadows and doesn't have that dramatic contrast that we love in film. It also emphasizes the model's cheekbones because of the shadows that it creates under the cheeks from having the key lights above the subject's face. The second lighting technique is flat lighting. Flat lighting is a method that evenly spreads light across the subject's face, creating minimal shadows and contrast. And just like butterfly lighting, flat lighting is also popular in beauty photography as it produces natural looking results that minimize wrinkles and shadows on the face. So both flat lighting and butterfly lighting techniques are achieved by placing the key light in front and center of the subject's face in the same direction as your camera. The difference is, for butterfly lighting, you have to raise the key light higher than the subject's head to create those small shadows under the nose and cheekbones. But generally, they both produce a flat image. A flat image is an image with little to no contrast between the bright parts and the dark parts. In the video industry, both these flat lighting techniques are used in TV programs such as the news, reality TV shows, infomercials, sitcoms, and soap operas. The main benefits of this lighting technique is that it creates a standard unified look for the entire set. This eliminates the need to adjust lighting between every setup like what would happen in a film, which saves a great deal of time. So guys, I just want to take a second to show you the importance of a hair light. So right now we don't have a hair light, and can you see how my hair is just disappearing into the background? Like, you can't clearly see where my hair ends and where the background starts. So as much as there's the background lights and then there's a key light, there's no light that separates me from the background. So this is the importance of a hair light, because it creates that separation between myself, which is the subject, and the background. So now I'm going to switch on our hair lights to show you the difference. So now my hair light is on and you can clearly see where my hair ends and where the background starts. So now there's a separation between the foreground and the background. That's why I always say, if anything, I will always have a key light, a hair light, and a background light. So as much as the fill light is cool, but it's just a cherry on top. So I'm going to switch it on and you're going to see. So now we have our fill light. It's nice to have, but you can do without it. So let's start with, what is a silhouette? A silhouette is a dark shape of something or someone that is outlined by a light source coming from behind. Silhouettes can be used in an interview to hide the identity of the person being interviewed or to add an element of mystery. There's also different ways to achieve a silhouette shot. Let me show you. So this is our first type of silhouette shot. So the one characteristic of this silhouette lighting technique is that you can clearly see that there's a light behind us and it's covering the entire body of the subject. As you guys can see, I have a light right behind my subject, and it was creating a nice outline of the shape of my body. I feel like this silhouette lighting technique is, you can really predict where the lighting is coming from, you know, like it's just straightforward. It's the most easiest to do, quick and easy. Just put a light behind your subject and you're good to go. And how you'd use this in an interview is if you want to completely hide the identity of the person being interviewed, but you still want your interview to look cinematic, as opposed to just putting a mask or blurring their face out. I feel like this is a more tasteful way of still capturing the person who's being interviewed if they want to hide their identity, but you still want the interview to look good and cinematic, as opposed to blurring out their face in post-production or, you know, all kinds of stuff. So now I'm going to show you the second technique of shooting silhouette shots, which is personally my favorite. Okay, cool. So now we are slowly getting into the second silhouette lighting technique. So this lighting technique is my personal favorite because it outlines one side of the subject and it's kind of like cool. Like, I always like things that are doing just a little bit and not too much. Whereas the previous silhouette lighting technique, it was just everywhere. It was like the entire shape of our body is lit up, and with this one, it's like, it's kind of cool because it's just this one side. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I'm just a fan of contrast, and that's what I get from this lighting technique. So yeah, this is the second silhouette lighting technique, where you still have the backlights, but it's coming from an offset angle as opposed to it coming directly from behind. So yeah, we're still in the second silhouette lighting technique. The difference is now we have two lights coming from the left and right, but they're still coming from behind us. So it's still a silhouette. You still don't see the interviewee's identity, but it's still a nice silhouette and it still looks good and very cinematic for an interview. So this is my favorite silhouette lighting technique. It's just more dynamic than just putting a light behind, you know, like it has more contrast. It's not just coming from one side. You don't have the lights just blasting all the way from behind you, which is just, you know. So I kind of like this one. It's very, you know, like just look at the difference and tell me what's your favorite. So you can even do like a profile view. And it's still a silhouette. You know, it's like a different feel. It's like a profile view, but it's still a silhouette. So it's like, no matter which angle I'm in, it's still a silhouette because the lights are still coming from one angle. So now it's up to you how you want to have the interview done, because either way, the subject's identity is still a bit hidden. But though I feel like this one, you can kind of see the subject's identity more. But yeah. I'm a fan of this one too. I mean, if you like, you can even add your hairlight. Yeah, I think that's a nice touch. And man, look at this. It's like a cinematic silhouette. It's like, it's amazing. Honestly, this is my favorite silhouette lighting technique. It's just perfect. So this is another cool lighting technique. I'm not really sure if it would fall under silhouette or anything, you know. This is like really cool in a movie or even in an interview, where you start off by keeping the person a mystery and then later on do a reveal as they move closer and closer to the light. And yeah, it's like a nice cool thing that you can do. So this lighting technique is technically still part of the silhouettes, but it's called cross lighting because you have two lights crossing each other from the left and the right. It could be two lights from the front and back, 40 degrees, and you know, so it just depends on how you want to cross them. I don't think front and back looks good though, unless one light is slightly dimmed. But yeah, this is called cross lighting. It technically does still fall under silhouettes because you can hide the middle part of a person's face. So if I move a bit forward like that, you know, can't really see the person's identity as much, you know, and then you can move back and then you're back to cross lighting. And this actually looks cool as well. So with cross lighting, you can even add a light to feel like a fill light in front of your subject's face if you want to do that. But generally, this is cross lighting. So this is just a tip of the iceberg. In the coming episodes, I'm going to be showing you how you can shoot in different environments and make them look like a scene from a movie. So like, comment, and subscribe, and click on that bell so that you can get notified when I drop the next episode, where I'll be turning a normal podcast studio into a prison cell for a movie scene.